A judge was paid to sentence innocent people, until a K-9 dragged out a bag that exposed his corruption. In the heart of the city, the courthouse loomed like a fortress of justice. Inside its hallowed halls, Judge Raymond Calloway presided over his courtroom with an iron will. His reputation as a strict, no-nonsense judge was well known throughout the legal community. But beneath the veneer of integrity, a dark secret festered. For years, Calloway had been accepting bribes, twisting the scales of justice to benefit the highest bidder. The guilty walked free while the innocent languished behind bars, their lives shattered by his corrupt rulings. Calloway revealed his power, secure in the belief that he was untouchable. The system he had sworn to uphold now served as his personal playground, a space where he could indulge his greed without consequence. As he took his seat on the bench that morning, Calloway's eyes fell upon the defendant, a young man named Miguel Rojas. A decorated veteran, Miguel stood accused of a crime he did not commit. But Calloway barely glanced at the evidence, his decision already made. Another bribe had exchanged hands, sealing Miguel's fate. With a bang of his gavel, Calloway sentenced Miguel to a decade in prison. As the young man was led away in handcuffs, his anguished cries echoed through the courthouse. But Calloway merely smiled, satisfied with another job well done. What the corrupt judge did not realize, however, was that Miguel had an ally who would stop at nothing to uncover the truth. His sister, Officer Lina Rojas, and her K-9 partner, Justice. Together, they were about to embark on a mission that would shake the very foundations of the legal system and bring Calloway's reign of corruption crashing down. Officer Lina Rojas had always looked up to her older brother Miguel. He was her hero, the one who had inspired her to join the police force and fight for what was right. When she learned of his wrongful conviction, Lina's world shattered. She knew her brother was innocent, but the evidence against him seemed overwhelming. As she delved deeper into the case, however, inconsistencies began to emerge. Witness statements didn't add up, and key pieces of evidence had mysteriously vanished. Lina's instincts told her that something was amiss, that her brother had been set up. But who would do such a thing and why? As she pondered these questions, her gaze fell upon her loyal K-9 partner, Justice. A German shepherd with a keen nose and an unwavering sense of duty, Justice had been by Lina's side since they first started working together. Lina knew that if anyone could help her uncover the truth, it was him. "Come on, boy," she said, scratching behind his ears. "We've got work to do." Together, Lina and Justice set out to investigate Miguel's case, determined to leave no stone unturned. Little did they know that their search for answers would lead them straight to the heart of a web of corruption that threatened to destroy everything they believed in. As Lina and Justice dug deeper into Miguel's case, a pattern began to emerge. They discovered that her brother was not the only innocent person to have been wrongfully convicted by Judge Calloway. Dozens of cases bore the same hallmarks: flimsy evidence, disappeared witnesses, and sentences that seemed out of proportion to the crimes. It was as if Calloway had a vendetta against certain defendants, a desire to see them punished regardless of their guilt or innocence. Lina's heart sank as she realized the magnitude of the problem. This wasn't just about her brother anymore. It was about a system that had been corrupted from within, a cancer that had spread to the very heart of the justice system. She knew that taking on a powerful figure like Calloway would be dangerous. He had friends in high places, people who would stop at nothing to protect him. But Lina also knew that she could not stand by and watch as more innocent lives were destroyed. With justice by her side, Lina vowed to bring Calloway to justice, no matter the cost. She reached out to the families of other wrongfully convicted defendants, building a network of support and gathering evidence of the judge's misdeeds. As word of her investigation spread, Lina began to receive anonymous tips, whispers of bribes and backroom deals, of evidence tampered with and witnesses silenced. She knew she was on the right track, but she also knew that she was running out of time. Calloway was a cunning adversary, and it would only be a matter of time before he caught wind of her efforts. Lina had to work fast, had to build an airtight case that even the most corrupt of judges could not ignore. With justice at her side, she pressed on, determined to see justice served, not just for her brother, but for all those who had suffered under Calloway's corrupt reign. Judge Calloway sat in his chambers, a glass of scotch in his hand. He should have been celebrating another successful day in court, another innocent life ruined for profit. But something felt off, a nagging sense of unease that he couldn't shake. He had heard rumors of an investigation, and whispers that someone was digging into his past rulings. At first, he had dismissed them as idle gossip, confident in his ability to cover his tracks. But as the days turned into weeks, the rumors persisted, growing louder and more insistent. Calloway knew he had to act fast, had to find out who was behind the investigation and shut them down before they got too close. He reached for his phone, ready to call in some favors, when a knock at the door startled him. It was his secretary, a young woman with a nervous expression on her face. "Judge Calloway," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "There's someone here to see you. A police officer." Calloway's heart skipped a beat, but he quickly composed himself. He was a master of deception, after all. "Send them in," he said, his voice cool and confident. A moment later, Officer Lena Rojas stepped into his chambers, her K-9 partner Justice at her side. Calloway's eyes narrowed as he recognized the young officer. She was Miguel Rojas's sister, the one who had been making waves in the department. "Judge Calloway," Lena said, her voice firm and steady. "I have some questions about my brother's case." Calloway leaned back in his chair, a smirk playing at the corners of his mouth. "I'm afraid I don't discuss specifics of cases outside of the courtroom, Officer Rojas." But Lena was not deterred. She took a step forward, her gaze locked on Calloway's. "I have reason to believe that my brother was wrongfully convicted, Your Honor, and I have evidence to suggest that he's not the only one." Calloway's smile faltered, a flicker of uncertainty crossing his face. He knew he had to tread carefully, and had to find a way to discredit Lena's evidence without arousing suspicion. "I'm sure you're just upset about your brother's conviction, Officer Rojas," he said, his tone patronizing. "But I can assure you that every case in my courtroom is handled with the utmost integrity." Lena's eyes flashed with anger, but she kept her composure. "We'll see about that, Your Honor," she said, turning to leave. "I have a feeling we'll be seeing each other again soon." As the door closed behind her, Calloway's facade crumbled. He knew that Lena Rojas was not going to back down, that she would stop at nothing to uncover the truth. He had to act fast, had to find a way to silence her before she exposed everything he had worked so hard to build. But as he reached for his phone once more, a sense of dread washed over him. For the first time in his long and corrupt career, Judge Raymond Calloway felt the icy grip of fear. Officer Lena Rojas sat at her desk, poring over the files scattered before her. She had been working tirelessly for weeks, piecing together the evidence of Judge Calloway's corruption. But every lead seemed to be dead-end, every witness too afraid to come forward. Lena rubbed her eyes, exhaustion creeping into her bones. She knew she was up against a formidable foe, a man with power and influence that reached into every corner of the justice system. But she also knew that she could not give up, not when her brother's freedom hung in the balance. As she reached for another file, Justice let out a low whine, his ears perking up. Lena glanced at her partner, a questioning look on her face. "What is it, boy?" she asked, watching as the K-9's nose twitched. Suddenly, Justice bolted for the door, his tail wagging furiously. Lena jumped to her feet, grabbing her coat and keys. She knew better than to question her partner's instincts. If Justice thought there was something worth investigating, she would follow his lead. Together, they raced out into the night, Justice leading the way. They wove through the city streets, the K-9's keen sense of smell guiding them towards an unknown destination. Finally, they arrived at a small, nondescript office building on the outskirts of town. Lena frowned, confused by their surroundings. But Justice was insistent, his nose pressed to the ground as he sniffed out a trail. Lena followed her partner inside, her hand resting on her holster. The building was dark and quiet, but Justice seemed to know exactly where he was going. He led her down a narrow hallway, his nose guiding them towards a closed door at the end of the corridor. Lena's heart raced as she reached for the doorknob, unsure of what she would find on the other side. But as she pushed the door open, her eyes widened in shock. There, scattered across the floor, were piles of cash and documents, evidence of Judge Calloway's corruption laid bare. Lena's breath caught in her throat as she realized the magnitude of her discovery. With this evidence, she could finally bring Calloway to justice. But as she reached for her radio to call for backup, a voice from the shadows stopped her cold. "I wouldn't do that if I were you, Officer Rojas." Lena spun around, her heart pounding in her chest. There, standing in the doorway, was a man she had never seen before. A man with cold, calculating eyes and a smirk on his face. "Who are you?" Lena demanded, her hand hovering over her holster. The man chuckled, stepping further into the room. "Let's just say I'm someone who has a vested interest in making sure Judge Calloway's little secret stays buried." Lena's eyes narrowed, her mind racing. She knew she was outnumbered and outgunned, but she also knew that she could not let this evidence slip through her fingers. She glanced at Justice, a silent communication passing between them. Then, with a nod, she made her move. In a flash, Lena drew her weapon, leveling it at the man's chest. At the same moment, Justice lunged forward, his teeth bared in a vicious snarl. The man stumbled backwards, his eyes wide with surprise. He reached for his own weapon, but it was too late. Justice had him pinned to the ground, his jaws clamped around the man's arm. Lena kept her gun trained on the man, her voice steady as she called for backup. She knew that this was only the beginning, that there would be more battles to come. But for now, she had the evidence she needed to bring Judge Calloway to justice. And with Justice by her side, she knew that nothing could stand in their way. News of Officer Lena Rojas's discovery spread like wildfire through the city. Within hours, the story had made headlines. The evidence of Judge Calloway's corruption splashed across every front page. Lena found herself at the center of a media frenzy, reporters clamoring for interviews and statements. But she remained focused on her mission, determined to see Calloway brought to justice. As the investigation unfolded, more and more people came forward with their own stories of injustice at the hands of the corrupt judge. Families of the wrongfully convicted, witnesses who had been silenced, even fellow judges who had long suspected Calloway's misdeeds. They all added their voices to the growing chorus of outrage. Lena worked tirelessly, building an airtight case against Calloway. She knew that the judge would stop at nothing to protect himself, that he would use every trick in the book to discredit her evidence and maintain his grip on power. But Lena was not alone in her fight. As word of her investigation spread, a groundswell of support began to build. Community leaders, activists, and ordinary citizens all rallied behind her, united in their determination to see justice served. Lena's heart swelled with pride as she watched the movement grow, saw the way that people from all walks of life came together to demand accountability and change. She knew that this was about more than just her brother, more than just one corrupt judge. This was about the very fabric of their society, the principles of justice and fairness that they all held dear. As the days turned into weeks, Lena and her team worked around the clock, building a case that would be impossible to ignore. They pored over financial records and witness statements, pieced together a damning portrait of a man who had abused his power for far too long. And through it all, justice remained by Lena's side, a constant presence of strength and support. The K-9's unwavering loyalty and keen instincts had been instrumental in uncovering the truth, and Lena knew that she could not have done it without him. Finally, after months of hard work and dedication, the day of reckoning arrived. Lena stood before a packed courtroom, her evidence laid out before her. She took a deep breath, steeling herself for the battle ahead. But as she began to speak, a hush fell over the room. Every eye was on her, every ear straining to hear her words. And as she laid out the case against Judge Calloway, piece by damning piece, a sense of hope began to build. For the first time in a long time, it seemed as though justice might finally be served. And as Lena looked out at the sea of faces before her, the families of the wrongfully convicted, the activists and community leaders who had stood by her side, She knew that this was a fight they would win. Together, Judge Raymond Calloway sat in his chambers, his head in his hands. The walls were closing in around him, the evidence of his corruption mounting with each passing day. He had always believed himself to be untouchable, a master of the game who could bend the law to his will. But now, as he listened to the growing clamor outside his door, the reporters and protesters demanding his resignation, the whispers of impeachment and criminal charges, he felt a sinking sense of dread. He had underestimated Officer Lina Rojas, had failed to see the depth of her determination and the strength of her allies. And now, as the truth of his misdeeds came to light, he knew that there would be no escape. Calloway's mind raced, searching for a way out. He had connections, favors he could call in, strings he could pull. But even as he grasped at these thin threads of hope, he knew that they would not be enough. The evidence was too damning, the outrage too great. He had been caught red-handed, his corruption laid bare for all to see. And now, as the walls closed in around him, he knew that he would have to face the consequences of his actions. A knock at the door startled Calloway from his thoughts. He looked up, his eyes wide with fear, as two officers entered his chambers. Judge Raymond Calloway, one of them said, his voice stern and unyielding. You are under arrest for bribery, corruption, and obstruction of justice. Calloway felt a wave of panic wash over him, his heart pounding in his chest. He opened his mouth to protest, to plead his innocence, but the words died on his lips. He knew that it was over, that there was no escape from the truth that had been uncovered. And as the officers led him away in handcuffs, he felt a sense of bitter irony wash over him. For years, he had sat in judgment of others, wielding his power like a weapon. But now, as he was led away to face judgment himself, he realized the true meaning of justice. It was not something that could be bought or sold, not a commodity to be traded for personal gain. It was a sacred trust, a promise to uphold the principles of fairness and equality that formed the bedrock of their society. And as Calloway was led away to face the consequences of his betrayal of that trust, he knew that he had no one to blame but himself. As news of Judge Calloway's arrest spread, the city erupted in celebration. Crowds gathered outside the courthouse, cheering and chanting as the disgraced judge was led away in handcuffs. For the families of the wrongfully convicted, it was a moment of vindication, a long-awaited acknowledgement of the injustices they had suffered. For the activists and community leaders who had fought for change, it was a powerful reminder of the strength of their collective voice. And for Officer Lina Rojas, it was a bittersweet triumph, a victory that had come at a great personal cost. She had risked everything to uncover the truth, had put her own career and safety on the line in the name of justice. And now, as she watched the crowd celebrate, she felt a sense of pride and accomplishment wash over her. But Lina knew that the fight was far from over. Calloway's arrest was just the beginning, the first step in a long journey towards true reform. There were still so many injustices to be righted, so many wrongs to be made right. As she stood there, surrounded by the cheers and chants of the crowd, Lina felt a renewed sense of purpose wash over her. She knew that she could not rest, could not let this moment of triumph be the end of her fight. She turned to Justice, her loyal partner and friend. The K9 looked up at her, his eyes shining with a fierce determination that matched her own. "We did it, boy," Lina said, kneeling down to scratch behind his ears. "But we're not done yet. There's still so much work to be done." Justice barked in agreement, his tail wagging with excitement. He knew, just as Lina did, that their mission was far from over. Together, they turned to face the crowd, ready to take on whatever challenges lay ahead. They knew that the road would be long and difficult, that there would be setbacks and obstacles along the way. But they also knew that they were not alone, that they had the support and love of a community that had come together to demand change. And with that knowledge, they knew that anything was possible. In the weeks that followed Judge Calloway's arrest, the city underwent a transformation. The once corrupt halls of power were slowly but surely cleaned out, as a new generation of leaders stepped up to take the reins. Officer Lina Rojas found herself at the center of this change, a symbol of the courage and determination that had brought Calloway to justice. She was hailed as a hero, a beacon of hope for all those who had suffered under the weight of injustice. But Lena knew that she could not rest on her laurels, that the fight for true reform was only just beginning. She threw herself into her work, partnering with community leaders and activists to push for meaningful change. Together, they worked to overturn wrongful convictions, to hold corrupt officials accountable, and to build a justice system that truly served the needs of all people. It was a daunting task, a challenge that would take years of hard work and dedication. But Lena was not alone in her fight. Everywhere she went, she was met with an outpouring of support and love from the community she served. People stopped her on the street to thank her, to share their own stories of injustice, and to offer their help in any way they could. And through it all, justice remained by her side, a constant reminder of the unbreakable bond between a police officer and her K-9 partner. Together, they continued to serve and protect, to stand up for what was right no matter the cost. As the weeks turned into months, Lena began to see the fruits of her labor. Slowly but surely, the city began to heal, to come together in a spirit of unity and hope. The once divided community was united in its determination to build a better future, to create a society that truly lived up to its highest ideals. And though the road ahead was long and difficult, Lena knew that she would never give up, never stop fighting for what was right. For she had seen firsthand the power of courage and determination, the strength that comes from standing together in the face of injustice. And with that knowledge, she knew that anything was possible. As the city continued to heal and rebuild, Officer Lena Rojas found herself at the center of a growing movement for change. Her story had inspired people across the country and sparked a national conversation about the need for reform in the criminal justice system. Lena was invited to speak at rallies and conferences, to share her experiences and her vision for a better future. She met with lawmakers and policy experts, worked tirelessly to push for meaningful change at the highest levels of government. But even as she fought for reform on a national stage, Lena never forgot the community she served. She continued to work closely with local leaders and activists, to listen to the needs and concerns of the people she had sworn to protect. Together, they launched new programs and initiatives aimed at building trust between the police and the communities they served. They worked to address the root causes of crime and injustice, to create a society that truly offered equal opportunity for all. And through it all, Lena remained true to herself and to her values. She knew that the fight for justice was not a sprint but a marathon, that there would be setbacks and challenges along the way. But she also knew that she had the strength and the courage to keep going, to keep fighting for what was right no matter the cost. And with justice by her side, she knew that she would never be alone in that fight. As the months passed, Lena began to see the impact of her work in the lives of those around her. She saw families reunited, saw communities coming together to heal and rebuild. She saw a new generation of leaders emerging, young people who had been inspired by her example and who were ready to take up the mantle of change. And though the road ahead was long and uncertain, Lena knew that she was exactly where she was meant to be. For she had found her calling, her purpose in life. And with that knowledge, she knew that she could face whatever challenges lay ahead with courage and determination. As the city continued to heal and rebuild, Officer Lena Rojas found herself at the center of a growing movement for change. Her story had inspired people across the country and sparked a national conversation about the need for reform in the criminal justice system. Lena was invited to speak at rallies and conferences, to share her experiences and her vision for a better future. She met with lawmakers and policy experts, worked tirelessly to push for meaningful change at the highest levels of government. But even as she fought for reform on a national stage, Lena never forgot the community she served. She continued to work closely with local leaders and activists, to listen to the needs and concerns of the people she had sworn to protect. Together, they launched new programs and initiatives aimed at building trust between the police and the communities they served. They worked to address the root causes of crime and injustice, to create a society that truly offered equal opportunity for all. One of their most successful initiatives was the creation of a community garden in the heart of the city. The garden was a symbol of hope and renewal, a place where people from all walks of life could come together to grow and heal. Lena and Justice spent countless hours in the garden, working side by side with volunteers and community members. They planted seeds and tended to the growing plants, watched as the once barren plot of land blossomed into a vibrant oasis of color and life. And as the garden grew, so too did the sense of community and connection among those who tended to it. People who had once been strangers became friends, united in their love for the earth and their commitment to creating a better world. For Lena, the garden was a powerful reminder of the resilience and strength of the human spirit. It showed her that even in the darkest of times, there was always the potential for growth and renewal. And as she looked out over the thriving plants and the smiling faces of those who tended to them, she knew that the seeds of change she had planted were finally beginning to bear fruit. As the community garden continued to thrive, Officer Lena Rojas found herself at the center of a growing sense of hope and optimism in the city. People who had once felt powerless and alone now had a sense of purpose and connection, a belief that they could make a difference in the world around them. Lena knew that this sense of empowerment was the key to creating lasting change. She had seen firsthand the power of ordinary people coming together to fight for what was right, had witnessed the incredible resilience and strength of the human spirit. And so she continued to work tirelessly to build on that sense of hope and possibility. She launched new initiatives aimed at supporting and empowering young people, at creating opportunities for those who had been left behind by a broken system. She worked with schools and community organizations to create mentorship programs and job training initiatives, to give young people the tools and support they needed to succeed in life. She partnered with mental health professionals and addiction specialists to address the root causes of crime and despair, to help people heal from the traumas of the past. And through it all, she remained a beacon of hope and inspiration for those around her. People looked to her as a leader and a role model, a shining example of what was possible when people came together to fight for what was right. But Lena knew that she could not do it alone. She relied on the support and love of those around her, on the unbreakable bond she shared with her K-9 partner Justice. Together, they continued to serve and protect, to stand up for the most vulnerable members of their community. And as the city continued to heal and grow, Lena knew that the fight for justice was far from over. There would always be challenges and obstacles to overcome, always be those who sought to divide and oppress. But she also knew that she had the strength and the courage to keep going, to keep fighting for what was right no matter the cost. For she had seen the power of hope and resilience, had witnessed the incredible potential of a community united in purpose and love. And with that knowledge, she knew that anything was possible. As the months passed and the city continued to heal, Officer Lena Rojas found herself at the center of a growing sense of hope and possibility. The once divided community was coming together in ways she had never thought possible, united in their determination to build a better future for all. Lena knew that this sense of unity was the key to creating lasting change. She had seen firsthand the power of ordinary people coming together to fight for what was right, had witnessed the incredible resilience and strength of the human spirit. And so she continued to work tirelessly to build on that sense of connection and purpose. She launched new initiatives aimed at fostering dialogue and understanding between different groups and communities, at breaking down the barriers that had divided them for so long. She organized town hall meetings and community forums, bringing together people from all walks of life to discuss the issues that mattered most to them. She worked with faith leaders and community organizers to create interfaith coalitions and grassroots movements, to build a sense of shared purpose and common cause. And through it all, she remained a beacon of hope and inspiration for those around her. People looked to her as a leader and a visionary, a shining example of what was possible when people came together to fight for what was right. But Lena knew that the fight for justice was far from over. There were still so many challenges to overcome, so many wrongs to be made right. And as she looked out over the city she loved, she knew that there was still so much work to be done. But she also knew that she was not alone in that fight. She had the support and love of a community that had come together to demand change, the strength and courage of a partner who would never leave her side. And so, with justice by her side and a sense of purpose in her heart, Lena stepped forward into the unknown. She knew that the road ahead would be long and difficult, that there would be setbacks and challenges along the way. But she also knew that she had the strength and the determination to keep going, to keep fighting for what was right no matter the cost. For she had seen the power of hope and resilience, had witnessed the incredible potential of a community united in love and purpose. And with that knowledge, she knew that anything was possible. As the years passed and the city continued to thrive, Officer Lina Rojas found herself at the center of a growing legacy of hope and change. The seeds she had planted in those early days had taken root and flourished, growing into a movement that had transformed the lives of countless people. Lina watched with pride as a new generation of leaders emerged, young people who had been inspired by her example and who were ready to take up the mantle of change. She saw communities that had once been divided coming together in a spirit of unity and purpose, working side by side to build a better future for all. And though the fight for justice was far from over, Lina knew that they had made incredible progress. The corrupt system that had once seemed so insurmountable had been brought to its knees, the voices of the oppressed and marginalized finally heard and respected. But Lina also knew that the work of building a just and equitable society was never truly finished. There would always be new challenges to face, new injustices to be righted. And so she continued to serve and protect, to stand up for what was right no matter the cost. And through it all, she remained true to herself and to her values. She knew that the fight for justice was not about glory or recognition, but about the quiet, unsung work of building a better world one day at a time. And so, as she looked back on all that they had accomplished and all that lay ahead, Lina felt a sense of deep gratitude and purpose wash over her. She knew that she had been given a great gift, the chance to make a real difference in the lives of those around her. And with justice by her side, she knew that she would never stop fighting for what was right. For she had seen the power of hope and resilience, had witnessed the incredible potential of a community united in love and purpose. And with that knowledge, she knew that anything was possible. Together, they could build a world of justice and equality, a world where every person was valued and respected, no matter their background or circumstances. It was a world worth fighting for, a world she knew they could achieve if they only had the courage to try. And so, with a heart full of hope and a spirit full of determination, Lina stepped forward into the bright, uncertain future, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. For she knew that the road to justice was long and winding, but that it was a road worth traveling. And with the love and support of those around her, she knew that anything was possible.